Can you be a badass warrior and vegan? Welcome to Activist. I'm Gareth.
And I'm Jackie. Today we have the absolute honour of talking with Damien Mander. Damien is the founder of the International Anti-Poaching Foundation and also the incredible Akashinga.
Akashinga is the world's first all-female, fully armed, plant-powered anti-poaching force. They are incredible and we can't wait for you to check out their work through this interview. So if you enjoy this content, then smash that like button, drop a comment below if you've learned something. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel to keep up to date with all of these interviews. We hope you enjoy this one as much as we did. Damien, it is such an honor to have you with us today. I must say, you are a huge inspiration to me, and I can't wait to get stuck into this interview and talk to you about your amazing work and what we can do to help it. The path you're on today is the result of a passion for adventure that found enormous purpose. For any of our viewers who haven't seen your wonderful talks, like the TEDx one, I will definitely have to link in the bio of this, and films like Akashinga. Can you give us an insight into the Damien who enlisted and became the elite warrior?
Yeah, mate, it's been well, firstly, thanks very much for having us, and thanks all the listeners for joining us. Yeah, look, it has been a roller coaster of a life. Sometimes seems like I've lived a couple of lifetimes crammed into the past 41 years, but it wouldn't change a thing. It's been a lot of good lessons along the way, a lot of humbling experiences, a lot of scary experiences, life-changing experiences, and we're all a product of our past, and we either choose to take on board the lessons we learn along the way or ignore them. And it's I've been very fortunate. I should have been dead about 5 or 6 times already. So everything from here is just extra time, really. So just trying to make the most of it. Hey, it's been good.
Fantastic.
Definitely. I can well understand that with the, we've listened to many of your talks and interviews, and I was a dairy farmer in a previous life, farming beef and animals. And so I really understand that whole, it's all a bit of a journey, isn't it? And looking back to that period of your life, as you've said yourself, I totally understand this. You don't get the time to reflect until you're out of it. And as a movement, we're constantly battling against cognitive dissonance. But as your statement shows, even those who are in the thick of it, committing those acts, but often can't see the situation for what it is, breaking down that dissonance seems to be an ongoing fight for this movement. But for people like yourself who have been part of these systems, how important is it that we take the past and use it as a tool for the future?
Nature's had billions of years to evolve, and evolution is the cutting away the bits that don't work and the retention of the pieces that do. And as humans, we don't have billions of years. We only have a handful of decades at best in our lives to do that, to keep the bits that are working and cut away the bits that don't. And I think being able to look internally at our conscience and listening to truth is a huge part of that evolution. And we can either choose to evolve as humans or to not. And for me, the suppression of the truth, and for something that humans are fantastic at, and that's creating excuses for our conveniences, the suppression of that for many years in terms of my dietary choices, it became too much. It wasn't the person I wanted to be, and it wasn't the person that I set out to live my life as. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to be the person that stood up for those that needed to be stood up for, and defended. And here I was, maybe doing it in some aspects of life and taking a lot of public credit for it, and behind closed doors, doing something completely different to what I was asking other people to do and other people to believe. And it's just one of those things that you either own up to your conscience or you suppress it. And I think suppression of knowledge of what is right is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, for sure. I remember in a previous interview you did, you spoke about the destructive obedience, and I love that sort of way you termed it, like for your past life, because even for me, although not having the same military experience and all that sort of stuff, it's great to sort of see you use that term and think back to my carnist days and how so many of us are destructively obedient in the manner of what we're doing. Every meal has been destructively obedient. And they also brought up digging your teeth with digging your grave with your own teeth.
Yeah.
I've been creating a huge list of so many of the fantastic stuff you come out with, but yeah, it's so great to see how much you can use that past and then go into the future with it. But on that point, and using those tools for the future, I can't help but feel we should all try and be like Jackie Chan, another master of combat. When watching his kung fu movies, we see him utilizing every tool available, whether it be taking down the bad guy with a wooden chair or a paper clip. He uses everything in the tool bag. And would you agree that we all need to become masters of utilizing the tools around us in order to create the results that we want, with a varying method?
But yeah, no, I just scraped into the 70s. I was born in December 1979. So I grew up in the 80s. So I'm more of a MacGyver guy, So
I get the duct
for those
tape
out there that are listening, like a matchbox and a piece of chewing gum, and you can blow some shit up. But look, we all need to use the tools that we have around us. But the most important tool we have is our voice and the truth. And we all have that. Those that are part of our movement, and I often get asked a lot, how can we do more? And I often feel as though, I'm talking to people and they're not listening, or I'm speaking on deaf ears, or I'm beating my head against a brick wall. My response is keep having your conversations, keep getting better at them, because a conversation that you have today may feel as though it's falling on deaf ears, but the truth is accumulative, and it adds up, and it may be a day, it may be a decade before that person is finally reached. But once the shutters come up, they'll never go down again. And for me, it took a number of years and a number of people speaking to me from different angles. And to go back to your previous question, I come from a certain demographic, and like it or not, I'm an alpha male, and I've got my background, I've got my history. And my credentials, but not only that, before I was in the military, I used to hunt, and the worst kind of hunter, the one that did it for fun and not for food. And it wasn't even fun; it was a desperate attempt to try and get some form of primal respect from my peers, and to do that, I took aim at the vulnerable. So I've been there. I've been the worst kind of piece of shit that you can imagine, and so I've come 180 degrees from there, and so I can speak to the person that I used to be, because there's that history, there's that DNA that's still in me that'll never change. I'll always carry that around as my baggage, but that baggage also became my freedom and my future. Being able to learn from that and acknowledge it and carry it forward. So let's just, if I can just say anything, it's just keep talking and keep pushing the message. And our message is growing stronger every day. It's growing wider, and it's growing stronger, and it's getting harder to avoid. And when you talk about cognitive dissonance, and what really, it's hard to comprehend. And I don't come from academia, but it's really hard to comprehend when you have someone who comes from a scientific background, who, particularly in conservation, and they're extremely well educated. Most of them, a lot of the people we work with have PhDs from places like Oxford University, and they will completely ignore the plant-based side of what we're doing, the agricultural side of what we're doing, and just focus on their work as conservationists, and sort of compartmentalize it without looking at the fact that the meat industry is the greatest negative environmental factor on this planet. And the biggest cause of animal suffering. Now, as conservationists, we generally sign up for conservation for one of two reasons, or both. One, because we want to protect the environment, or two, because we like animals, or all the two together. And the fact that land degradation and clearing for the meat industry, either to put livestock on it to grow crops to feed that livestock, is the greatest cause of deforestation we have on the planet. Or the CO2 emissions from beef, for example, is eating away at our ozone. All these things, they add up. And for me, a conservationist, there's two types of conservationists. There's vegans, and there's those that don't want to take their work home. And the disconnection that everyday person will place in their life to separate what is convenient for them and what is inconvenient and what they don't want to own up to, it sort of perplexes me. But when you get someone who's highly educated that is able to still do that, that's a little harder for me to understand.
Yeah, I can totally get that. I've been talking this week with some some advocates for regenerative farming, you know, and they keep sort of saying we need some animals, we still need some animals, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why do animals even need to be in the equation? You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just farm, you know, just focus on the plants? But I mean, talking between us as Kiwis and Aussies respectively, and you touched on it just before, you know, what is the difference? I've got to ask this, what is the difference between someone shooting buffaloes and rhinos in Africa and someone shooting deer or tahr or wild pigs here in New Zealand and Australia? You know, I mean, are these kind of animals any less worthy of protecting because they're not seen as exotic or special? You know, and you've mentioned about how these people go out there for fun, you know, and it's so true. It's a huge part of our culture over here. And, you know, we know a lot of people, unfortunately, that still do this. And how does someone like us reason with the everyday smaller game hunter, you know, who's going out for a weekend trip with the boys or going out to shoot an animal for the freezer? How can we bring that relativity home? Because like you say, I just want to be like, you're just shit for doing that. I don't like what you're doing. But how do we reason better?
Yeah, you know, I often think we can be our own worst enemies. You know, we get so passionate about what we're talking about, and so, you know, often aggressive both internally against each other for people that don't you know, aren't as vegan as others or aren't as staunch or, you know, have certain flexibilities or whatever it may be, and you know, we get aggressive, and then, you know, when we're outwards, you know, and I'm guilty of it as well. You know, if I see someone fucking with an animal or you know, putting something up on social media, I find it really hard to fucking bite my tongue and tell me, hey, you know, stop being an asshole. But then I also got to think back to who I was and what sort of reaction I would give to someone who spoke to me like that when I was like that not so long ago. And, you know, it's probably just laugh at them, call me a fucking vegan hippie or whatever, tell them to piss off, or, you know. But, you know, everybody has a you know, our own vulnerabilities, and what those vulnerabilities are, I don't know. Like for me, you know, it became more of a, you know, being called out type thing, you know, by myself and by others. It's like, hey, you know, preaching one thing but not practicing it, and which I'd already been saying to myself, and you know, that was enough for me. For others, it may be, you know, health reasons. For others, it may be, you know, shame or sympathy for animals. We all got to walk our own path, our own journeys, and you know, for me, it came down to personal experiences with animals that were suffering, and yeah, you know, and that, I mean, that came from, you know, it's after 3 years in Iraq, it sort of really broke me down in terms of the macho and the ego side, and the you know, this armor plating that I put around myself with some bulletproof creature. It's just, you know, just waltz through life doing whatever they want, without any care or courtesy for others. And you know, when you see a nation destroyed and you're part of the system that's destroying it, and the lives that are lost, you sort of start to gain a different perspective and lens through which to see the world. And yeah, you know, maybe if I didn't go to Iraq, maybe if I didn't join the military, I'd still be hunting, I'd still be doing what I did to animals. I don't know. To answer your question, I don't know. It's just, but if we all keep, you know, as our movement grows wider and wider, and our voice stronger, if we all keep having our conversations, and whether it's on social media, whether it's in the news, whether it's in person, the radio, you know, we just keep getting better at our message, and eventually we reach critical mass. We're not there yet, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. You know, I've been part of this movement, you know, in terms of the you know, I call it animal rights, vegan, plant-based, you know, within the conservation sector. I've been in conservation for 12 years. I've been in the AR sector for about 9 years. And, you know, when I look back on the people that have been doing it from when nobody fucking knew what a vegan was, you know, 30, 40 years, you know, it's huge respect. But the changes that I've seen in just the last 9 years, you know, I've got hope. And not beyond hope, I've got certainty that we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to see, even in the last few years that we've been vegan, just to see how it just bloom exponentially each year. So hopefully we're well on track to getting where we need to be. Well, one of the things that helped with the Catalyst was some work that most people should know is the Game Changers documentary, which you featured in. And it took the world by storm in 2019. And this film helped to bring the plant-based message to the masses and shine new light on the reasons to eat plant-based. However, it wasn't necessarily a vegan film. It was more of a plant-based film, you know, but personally, I still believe it's fantastic. One of my favorites to recommend to non-vegans. But it was your segment that was one of our favorites, closely followed by our mate Patrick Baboumian, because it shone that light on animal ethics, you know. And what was it like being the sole sort of animal rights sort of message during this landmark project?
Just to take it back a step, you know, so me and Patrick stayed together when we were at Sundance for the launch there, and all I can say is I'm glad I don't have to pay fucking Patrick's food bill. And man can eat, geez, he's a big man and he's a hungry boy, you know. And so, but absolute gentle giant, a very lovely guy, and I look forward to being able to catch up with him again. It was actually a huge honour. And, you know, we discussed from the beginning with James and Joseph, you know, what my part in the movie would be and how that would be used to bring across the animal side. And, you know, it was largely a show targeted at men, I would say, and you know, trying to hit at the ego side of man and this myth that you've got to eat meat to be a man. And, I suppose they had in their minds the idea of a certain character that would be able to tell the animal side, and so it was good to be able to represent the animals. And I actually don't have much of an interest in the nutritional side, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to those that are involved in that side of it, because I know how important it is. In the work that we do here in Africa, we have a program, Back to Black Roots, and there's a huge focus on the nutritional side. I just happen to personally maybe not look after myself as well as I should, although I'm still holding it together. But you know, for me, it's all about animals, and that's what I signed up for, and that's why I stick it in. I'm sticking with the movement. You know, what is it? It's been 9 years now, or 9 years ago I went vegetarian, 8 years ago vegan. And look, I'm not perfect. And I will say this, because some people get so scared of like, fuck, if I go vegan, you know, what if I'm not perfect? And, you know, I've had a few 3 a.m. drunken romances with the cheesy omelette over the years. And, you know, it's not about being perfect. It's about trying. And if you don't get it right or you fuck it up, you know, it's fine. The sun's always going to come up tomorrow. So, you know, the people that are out there and they're watching, I think, oh, geez, you know, I could never go vegan. It's not like a competition. It's not like final, you know. I mean, people change. You know, I've fucked up a few times, but I own it and get back on it the next day.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. You know, every bit helps, doesn't it? It really does. And, you know, every time we show up, every meal that we have that doesn't include animals, that's, you know, it's it's all just good. It's all good. And I have to say, you know, when we were watching Game Changers, we were at the premiere, and when we were watching your segment, you know I wasn't the only one, just wanted to bloom and stand up and start clapping in the middle of the theater, you know, seeing you talking about, you know, the connection and how you made the connection. And it was like, yes, you know, I would love to know how many people have you know, you've helped make the connection that wouldn't have been expecting it through watching the Game Changers. And as you mentioned, you know, it's had a strong focus on dispelling the myths around the need for eating animal proteins in order to be masculine. And this is a topic that you also continue to advocate on and present yourself as a brilliant role model for. You know, I know for me, even, you know, I'm not even a bloke, obviously, but for me, since I became vegan 4 years ago, my definition, my perception of what it is to be manly, to be real man, to be really masculine has completely changed. You know, how do you yourself, as someone who, like you say, is that alpha male, how do you define masculinity? And, you know, probably how would you define it now as compared to how you did?
You know, and I still keep company with a lot of ex-special forces guys, and, you know, especially if you're around having a barbecue or whatever, and, you know, I'm inside frying mushrooms on the side or whatever. Like, oh, you know, you're fucking vegan, you know, where you get your protein from, fucking hold my shit together. That's where I get it from. But it's, you know, as someone is strong and alpha and you know, you got to own that. And I think our job in society is to be protectors and to stand up for those that can't defend themselves, and animals sit right at the top of that list. And my message out there for all my brothers who, you know, the big macho guys, the tough guys, why would you want to fuck with something that can't defend itself? And beyond that, why would you want to pay someone else to do your dirty work? And ultimately, that for me is, that's why I'll never touch meat again. Yeah. Don't want to pay someone to do something I'm not willing to do myself, and ultimately, I don't want to fuck with something that is innocent, doesn't deserve to die or suffer, and can suffer just the same as us.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that approach on that. Your life's focus now, though, is the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, the IAPF, and the Akashinga program as well, which I'm looking forward to getting into. Both programs you were the founder of, and you were inspired by the work of the rangers and seeing firsthand the plight of the wildlife, and your passion for adventure truly found its purpose in doing this work. We wondered if you'd mind sharing that catalyst moment that you had that really brought it home for you doing this work.
Yeah, so there was obviously a lifetime leading up to the point of change and deciding to set up an organisation, the IAPF, that would carry forward the work that I wanted to do in conservation. The breaking point for me was seeing a buffalo, a big, majestic, powerful animal, female buffalo caught in a wire snare with her back leg stuck there, and a wire snare is what your poachers will put over the tracks of where animals go, and the animals walk through, and they get trapped either around their neck or their body or their legs, and as they pull harder and harder, the snares get tighter and tighter, and they're tied to big trees. And this buffalo, the rangers, they can look at the ground and they can read the ground, the tracks on the ground, the same way that you or me read the front page of the newspaper. It's a language, and they can tell how long something has been there or how long ago it came past. And the ranger's there, and she's still alive. You could hear the bones crunching under her skin where she'd ripped her own pelvis in half. And the ranger said she'd been there for 3 days, struggling like that. And I don't know I don't know why. And seeing animals like that affected me differently than before Iraq. Iraq just gave me a different perspective on things. And so we euthanized that buffalo that day. And as we did, she started to give birth to a stillborn calf. And that was a turning point for me. It was a finishing point of one life and the beginning of another.
Yeah, I think it was Rich Roll that you were talking to about that experience. And I was walking down the street a couple of days ago listening to you talking about it. And I was just, crying as I was walking along down the street, because I can't imagine, like you say, they're innocent. They don't deserve any of this. And so, I can't even imagine to have that effect. I mean, just hearing you talking about it, to actually be there, to not, how could you not be affected by that? And, talking of catalysts, I mean, I have to wonder as well, how did you come up with the concept for Akashinga? Did you have a similar kind of light bulb moment where you just realized, this is what we need to do, to progress conservation? And how did you go about starting something like the world's first fully armed, plant-based female anti-poaching force?
So Akashinga was born out of desperation to try and do things differently, to try and find a better solution. And, I spent a lot of time traveling pre-COVID around the world, lecturing on the Nat Geo Speakers Bureau, and just talking at schools and universities. And I used to start my talk by saying, listen, what we do is not the answer. Think of us, and this is when we had this very militarized approach. Think of us as like the paramedic trying to get the patient to the operating table, so someone can come up with a better solution than what we have. We're just trying to keep these things alive. And there was a combination of multiple factors that led us into trialing what has gone on to become the only network of nature reserves in the world to be managed and protected by women. Armed all-female anti-poaching units out there protecting nature. And it was, initially, so looking at the conservation industry where women on the ground are outnumbered, in the field they're outnumbered at a ratio of around 100 to 1 to men. So women weren't given access to the roles and the experience they needed to be able to rise up in the ranks and fulfill management positions, and at the same time seeing other industries getting ahead by getting more women on the board, more women into management positions, more women as CEOs. And so conservation was sort of being left behind. And I don't want to be unfair to the industry, but if we were getting it right, the situation would be much better on the ground. And so you're looking at different ways at a time when the conservation industry was becoming increasingly militarised and increasingly antagonistic with Indigenous local populations. We were running a program along the South African-Mozambique border, spending 7 figures a year on that, to have an ongoing conflict with the local population to try and protect a third of the world's remaining rhinoceros across the fence in Kruger National Park. And it wasn't sustainable. The UN Population Division says there'll be 2 billion people on this continent by 2040, and you get to a certain point, you realise it'll be the people that determine the future of wildlife and conservation here, not bigger fences and more guns and firepower. So that was the sort of why, but the how was still yet to be crafted. We started looking at other programs in conservation that were more inclusive of women, but we found them to be women to be like in position of tokenism. They were given a uniform and a rifle, and pictures were taken for marketing, and they weren't actually doing the job that was being portrayed that they were doing. Or women, they if you've got a staff list, there might be a certain higher threshold percentage of women that are on that staff list, but the fact is they're sitting on desks or on checkpoints or on gates or walking fences. So ultimately for us it became a question, can women be trained to do the job? If the answer was yes, then let's try it. If the answer was no, then we'll go back to the drawing board. So that's sort of very simple for us to determine. We do selection and put women through selection process. Still weren't convinced, and then I read an article in the New York Times 2017, and within that article there's a link back to another article written in 2015 about the US Army Rangers putting women through training in preparation for frontline deployment. And so the relevance of that article to me personally was, a decade before reading it, was, we were on a routine mission in northern Baghdad when our convoy had been hit, and a few people at the checkpoint were going through, had been killed. We were quickly surrounded. Shit was not going well, and it was the US Army Rangers that came in and were able to extract us out and get us back to safety. So, yeah, it was just querying myself was, okay, this unit that saved my life is now training women to be Army Rangers. Then let's try and train women to be wildlife rangers and proper ones, not ones that are stuck on a checkpoint. And that's how it started. Hey.
Well, it's fantastic. And we'll also have to link in the Akashinga short documentary link to this, because it's fantastic to see part of that process shown. But one common misconception, and I think it's important that we should bring up, is that anti-poaching doesn't necessarily mean a manhunt or running around the African plain shooting people. And so, in fact, it's quite the opposite. Your team practices the use of minimal force in order to get the job done, When we spoke to Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd, recently, he described his approach when sinking whaling ships as aggressive non-violence, a term we can't help but love. Would you class your action in a similar way?
Look, ultimately, the area that we deployed the first group of women, we started this program with 16 women, and they've got 240 staff, scaling towards 1,000 women by 2026. The area they were deployed into in the 16 years prior to this project starting, there were 8,000 elephants killed. So 8,000 times teamed up armed people came into that area willing to kill elephants or anyone standing in their way. And so, like, for us, while we can hope for the best, we also have to prepare for the worst. These are armed gangs, often with a military background, using automatic rifles, heavy caliber rifles, to come in and conduct their operations after crossing international borders. And the stakes are high. So while we can hope for the best, we have to prepare for the worst. And so there is a fairly high degree of training that the women have to go through. It's quite rigorous. A selection process in itself is very tough, and a lot, a lot of the women come and try out the pre-interview process, or pre-selection process. We can only take a certain amount to go on the selection. Funnily enough, the ones that do go through selection, they're bloody tough. Hey, most of them make it to the end of selection, and then we have to make a choice who the best ones are. But I will say, so when we were in Iraq, our job was to train battalion-sized groups of Iraqi nationals, both police and special police, the paramilitary wing, and deploy them out around the country. And we found when we did that, a lot of them wanted retribution, and they used their position of power and authority to go out and seek that retribution. And we were worried that we would get the same reaction with the women because of the backgrounds they came from. Our selection criteria was 18 to 35. Survivors of serious sexual assault, domestic violence, AIDS orphans, single mothers, and abandoned wives. And what we got compared to Iraq was completely the opposite. Women just seemed to have a very different value system, a natural de-escalation of tension and force versus an antagonism in potentially or in positions of conflict or potential conflict. And for us, a lot of these things we were learning as we were going along, and I very much became the student in so many areas. I mean, my background is counterinsurgency warfare. Our job is to look for a fight and finish it. I've built a career across 3 continents by training hard men, breaking hard men, bringing them to the point of breaking and rebuilding them into what we need for frontline deployment. I never worked with a woman, never trained a woman, never deployed with a woman. So this was all very new for me, and the lessons that we were learning along the way is actually, I can't sit here and say we planned it all out from the beginning, because we didn't. A lot of things just fell into place. And, there's another article in the New York Times from, quite some time ago. And the heading is just add women and stir. And essentially that's what we did. And everything else is sort of spun off that. And, but I mean, to give you, if you start talking economics, we spend about 1/3 per acre per annum protecting the areas that we look after now than what we did when we're working along the Mozambique South Africa border, because we don't have helicopters, we don't have aircraft and military grade hardware. Yes, the women carry weapons. They've had to, in over 300 arrests, they've had to fire their weapons once. What we do have is something more powerful than biceps and bullets, and that's interpersonal relationships driven at household level by the women whose grandparents were raised in these communities. Those grandparents raised their parents, and their parents raised them, and they're raising their children there. They have a vested interest in those places and the well-being and the long-term benefits of conservation in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, watching these women just stirs something in my heart, and my heart just gets full watching them, and just, oh my God, like I am so... The pride, I feel so much pride, and I can't imagine what it must be like for you, but I am so proud of these incredible women. And, you said yourself, women are the future of conservation, and the incredible women of Akashinga have already proven themselves better equipped to take on this role traditionally given to males. In a previous interview, you spoke of how the women are able to bridge the gap between the community and conservation, just like you said, and these two things are previously really at odds with one another. Can you tell our viewers a bit about this? I've been following you for a long time, so I know about the community-led conservation, but it's so unique.
Yeah, so I mean, it feeds back into that what I was saying about the de-escalation and not looking for a fight, but looking for a resolution. And, women tend to want to have a conversation with something before they blow it up or shoot it. Which is great when you're trying to have a relationship with tens of thousands of people that live alongside the area that you protect and outnumber you, 1,000 to 1. It's as I said, I don't know. It's sometimes it's almost like with different species, and it's just but the benefits, it goes beyond just de-escalation in force. Women are fantastic at collecting information. About 1/3 of law enforcement crimes around the world are solved by catching the person in the act, the perpetrator in the act. The other 97% are solved through investigations and intelligence-led operations. So information is critical. Having a community that's willing to give you that information is just as critical. And so they're good relationships that the women are able to have with the communities by not trying to have a war with them. That feeds back into the system, and we're able, we know people come into our reserves. Animals do get poached, but it's either a day, a week, or a month, and we catch those people. The other important component of this too is the economic side. which I touched on briefly before, but it's actually, so for the listeners that probably will appreciate this point, the reserves that we have, we started with 1, we now have 8 reserves under contract, anywhere from 20 to 45 years. The reserves that we had are all former trophy hunting areas. Trophy hunting is a dying industry across the continent. There is collectively twice as much area set aside for trophy hunting as there is as national parks. And as hunting dies for a number of reasons, one being reduced wildlife populations, other being shifting in regulation around the exportation of certain trophies, such as elephant ivory from places like Zimbabwe to the US that used to make up 52% of the clientele. That's been banned or stopped. Unfortunately, it's got nothing to do with elephants' lives. It's got to do with sanctions on Zimbabwe. The other one is just a younger generation raised on social media that doesn't want to shoot things anymore. So all that means a shrinking customer base of hunters and areas like the ones we pick up that are being left dilapidated, shot out, no animals. The community will come in and kill whatever's left, cut down the trees, turn it into a grazing area, agriculture, human settlement, and then that area is lost. And at a time when civilization has been brought to its knees with COVID, and been brought to its knees by a small-scale anteater, it highlights the importance of biodiversity and looking after these natural areas. I don't think there's ever been a bigger lesson in modern history as what we're getting at the moment if we don't look after nature. So holding on to these areas for us is important. Being able to find an alternate use or an alternate economic benefits to the communities through these areas as opposed to trophy hunting was what we set out to do. And to do that, we had to look at hunting not as an argument to be had, but as an equation to be solved. And so we sat around the table with hunters, and I can proudly say I'm the owner of a hunting company, which we bought out with all their land and contracts. We don't hunt on any of our areas, obviously. That's stopped. But with the model that we have, with national parks and with areas that a lot of conservationists protect, they would often bring in men from around the country to protect those areas, and bring in men from hundreds of kilometres away. And the reason that was done was to avoid collusion or corruption with local communities they may have grown up with. With the women, and as we scale, we haven't had a single incidence of corruption, which in itself is another huge benefit. If Denmark is number 1 on the global corruption index, Zimbabwe sits 160 out of 175 countries. Okay, so it's one of the countries in the world where corruption is most damaging. And so to be able to remove corruption from what we do through the employment empowerment of women is a huge way forward for us. But what it does do is it allows us to employ women directly from the local community, because we don't have to worry about this corruption issue. And that turns the largest line item in our budgets, which is a range of salaries, into a direct community investment. And it's not going in at government level, or it's only going in at household level into the hands of women. 62 cents from every operational dollar we spend is going into the community. So we can't buy engine parts and oil and fuel and all that. And off that 62 cents, about 80% of that is going in at household level. So it's getting right in there at grassroots level. And on paper, we're putting the same amount into the community every 34 days as what trophy hunting was doing per annum. So we have a viable economic alternative to trophy hunting that for us is only working with women at the center of that strategy. And like beyond that, the bottom line triple gears. Women spend 80 to 90% of their salary on family and local community versus a man that'll spend on average between 30 and 40%. So, just the numbers alone, we found a way to turn the largest line item in our budget into the most effective form of community development. And that's women's empowerment. There's an overwhelming body of evidence that tells us empowering women is the single greatest force for positive change on earth today. And it definitely is never more so seen than in the rural areas of Southern Africa. And just by shifting the strategy of conservation, by putting women's empowerment at the center of that strategy, it gives us the greatest traction in community development, and conservation became a byproduct of that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And I know in previous interviews you've said how one of the most important things of these programs has been working with people, and it's fantastic to see how you guys are working with the community and get the community to work with each other. and not be fighting each other anymore on this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Thank you.
No, we used to look at conservation as starting within the reserve and going out protecting it. And now you start in the communities and protect in towards nature. And it's definitely, we saved, millions of dollars by shifting that strategy, which we were able to reinvest back in the community in clinics, education, roads, water, other rural development programs, expansion across more areas. So, yeah.
It's amazing. Like, the more I hear about your work, I just love it. It's just staggering what you're achieving out there, and the area of land, the millions of acres you're protecting, and the wildlife is coming back, and there's so much more to it than everybody thinks. So we really want to make sure that everybody follows your work, and we'll certainly get to that. But for me on a personal level, when researching the Akashinga, an interesting thought occurred to me in regard to the link between maternal instinct and roles given to women around animals. So on my first hearing about the all-female force, my initial thought was that this instinct had to be the reason for choosing women over men, because having had that role exploited myself during my former years in the dairy industry, that was something that's why women traditionally get given the role for caring for the calves, because we're better at looking after babies, we're better at caring for animals. So I found it both surprising and refreshing that with Akashinga this isn't the case. Akashinga is a truly empowering and inspiring recognition of female equality and skill, as you say. Do you come across this assumption often? I just wondered, is that why women are doing it, because we've got that maternal instinct?
No, look, interesting to say that. No, it hasn't really come up too much, but I will say it is one of the empowering things about the program and what does make it. I think it's these women with this program. I say, beyond their families, they have what is the most elusive thing in life, and it's purpose, and they really are. They're passionate about protecting these animals. And when we do lose an animal, it is, we all of us, we spend more time looking after the animals than we do looking after our families. That's just the nature of the job and the amount of time we spend away. So when we lose an animal, we have to be right 100% of the time. Poachers have to be right once, and when we lose one, it's a blow. Hey?
Yeah. There's one thing that I thought of as well about with the program. So the Akashinga program is vegan in itself, but you don't actually have to be vegan to be part of it necessarily, from the people come from the community. And quite often when speaking to Canis, they'll bring up these arguments of, what about the Inuit population, how, they can't eat vegetables, they need to eat meat. What's it like providing the plant-based, the vegan food in Zimbabwe and stuff like that, like especially when you're on an expedition? Is it easy enough?
Yes, I mean we've got 7 vegan chefs cooking for this growing army of conservationists. We have a program within Akashinga, and that's called Back to Black Roots, headed up by Chef Kohler. She just had a great write-up in Forbes magazine a few weeks ago, actually. And Back to Black Roots is a 4-stage program, and the first stage is teaching the rangers not only how to grow your own food, but how to prepare your own food. And meal plans, and how to speak about your food and understand it from a nutritional, an ethical, and an environmental standpoint. And when we do those 3 things, they start to understand the most important thing, and that's the why. And so that's stage 1. Stage 2 is then working with their families. Stage 3 is working with the communities, and stage 4 is building ambassadors. We're at stage 4 at the moment. Look, not everyone likes it when they first get there. We tried this with a group of male rangers some years ago, and we almost had a mutiny. They said I'm interfering with their culture, and I kindly highlighted that Africa was largely raised on a predominantly plant-based diet, where meat was reserved for ceremonial purposes, and it was only colonists that brought large-scale agriculture and also very destructive crops. Very poor from a nutritional standpoint, crops to Africa, that became their new culture. And, so I look at the majority of women, and interestingly, it is one of the things that the reporter will, when we've got a journalist or something in camp, and they'll come up to me and say, hey, listen, I pulled a few of the women aside and we were having a bit of a chat, and I was asking them about the whole vegan thing and how serious they are about it, and if it's just a facade. And he's like, nah, they're pretty serious about it. Yeah. And I will say, not all the women maintain it at home, but the majority do. Everything we do in camp is plant-based. In our main camp where our headquarters is, we've got 5 acres of gardens growing there, and gardeners, and we actually got a permaculture specialist coming in soon. We're going to be shifting a lot of it to permaculture. We're doing a big garden at one of the local schools as well, so that'll be part of the community component of Back to Black Roots. And you look at so many of these countries in sub-Saharan Africa where the medical systems is nothing like we'd expect back home, and the difference between life and death can just be often basic medicine, and countries where cancer and diabetes and stroke and heart disease are so common. Prevention is the best cure, and prevention in its best form comes in what we put in our body.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. We recently spoke with Eduardo Gonçalves. He's the founder of the campaign to ban trophy hunting, and we were shocked beyond words at the scale of the industry. And as we've touched on earlier, in Zimbabwe, you described in a previous interview how 20% of Zimbabwe was set aside for trophy hunting, and then across Africa, it was an area the size of Texas, which is mind-blowing. In the former life with the military, though, you were in a job where the budget was no problem. You could do whatever you liked, in order to get the job done. You just keep on spending the Defence Force budget. What's it like now being on the other side of the table, where you are no longer the hugely funded organization? You're now sort of on the back foot trying to fight this huge, well, luckily, as you say, it's a shrinking industry now, the trophy hunting, but it's got so much money behind it. You're now on the side of right, fighting that financial might. What's it like for you?
So, we're not necessarily there to fight the hunting industry. Ours is to fight illegal hunting, which is known as poaching. And there is a differentiation there. And so even if you want to talk about hunting, which is fine, just as long as people understand one is legal, and as much as we may dislike that or leaves a bad taste in the mouth, the other one is illegal. So poaching is illegal, and that's what we're constantly fighting. Hunting is we're trying to create alternate economic income streams for areas that were previously used as hunting. We don't want to come in and take over a hunting operation that's working, because it's going to be a huge commercial outlay to buy something like that out. Rather wait till it's the area is dilapidated and come in and do a long-term deal with a community that's looking for something different. Now understanding that hunting is has died in that area. So to talk about hunting, you've got to split the hunters up too. So you've got the hunter, who is the operator, the guy that takes out the lease on the land, and for him, hunting is generally not a way of life. Hunting is an income stream. And I'm not saying this in trying to defend the industry or trying to defend the individuals. I'm saying it because I used to be the other type of hunter, the one that did it for fun, or the trophy hunting, the ego trip. That's the guy, generally the big fat slob you see come out from America, sit on the back of a truck, drive around till they find something and go and shoot it, take it home and hang it above the mantelpiece, and bring the boys around for a beer and show them how small your dick is. But the operator on the ground, they're often talking about people that have been in the industry for decades, sometimes generations, and they've made something work, often from nothing, in very tough circumstances, with very little income stream. And this is what the anti-hunting movement needs to understand. Okay, when you switch hunting off in an area without an alternate source of income, everything is lost. Not just the animals, not just the trees, but the land itself, unless there's someone else there ready to take it up. So we can jump up and down as much as we want and say we hate hunting. We don't see fucking pictures of dead animals on Facebook and people standing behind it with their rifles and that. But if you don't like it that much, then be a part of a different solution. Don't just shut it down, because when you shut it down, the trees go, the animals go, the fences go, the patrols go, the vehicles go, the community development work goes. And the only thing I dislike more than hunting when we're talking about hunting is the fact that as an international community, we've relied on it to be the only economic income stream for so many areas. Okay, so if the world really hates it that much, then put the money on the table so we can buy out these places and do something different with them. Until then, you can't just have it banned overnight, because there's far more at stake than and I agree. From an ethical standpoint, it's fucking horrendous. From a practical standpoint, you can't just switch off one switch and expect everything else to just be rosy afterwards. It's not. It gets even shittier.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight, because these are the insights that we need within the movement, because our vegan FTA, we want people to be able to advocate better and to understand who our adversary is and how to work with them. That's what we need, like we've seen that with, Jackie, and having her experience in the dairy industry has helped us to further our movement in finding alternative solutions. And yeah, thanks so much for that insight.
Yeah, exactly. We want everything to end overnight, but we've got to face the reality. These things take time. And these times are challenging now more than ever. But so 2020 was a year that struck a devastating blow to the economic structure globally, and many people were forced to either diversify or become bankrupt. How did the pandemic affect the model that you had put in place, and how has it affected trophy hunting in general?
Yeah, so we, there was, I remember it, going back last year, there was about a 2-week period where I literally hardly left my desk, maybe 4 or 5 hours a day to go and sleep and then straight back. And that was us just changing the whole way that we approach things from a fundraising standpoint, operational standpoint. We made huge cutbacks across the organisation. I think in the space of 2 weeks, we cut back about 40% of operational expenditure, put some projects on hold, prioritised what was needed now, what could wait. And I'm proud to say that we didn't lay off one staff member because of COVID reductions in fundraising over the last 13 months, 12 months. The only people that took pay cuts were management, with myself taking the largest pay cut. And all that was restored after about 5 months. We switched a lot of our fundraising to digital. I used to, spend a lot of time traveling and going speaking with people around the world and doing lectures and fundraising and having meetings. And obviously that couldn't happen. I think we're all a bit tired of the Z word at the moment, Zoom. But so I'm looking forward to getting back on the road and getting out there and having these interpersonal conversations and with the bigger donors, and the small donors as well. It all adds up. But it's been a tough year. We still experienced about 26% growth in our financial income last year, which was below projection and where we've been for previous few years. But we stuck it out. We dug our heels in. We stuck it out, and as we say in the clearance diving branch where I came from, improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I know that's easier said than done, but we did it. And it's a tough time as a conservationist in any time, given that the majority of funding that goes into not-for-profit ventures goes to humanitarian causes, about 95%. About the 5% reserved for animals, domestic and wild, and conservation and climate change, and environmental causes. We in the USA, there's more money given to ballet each year than is given to conservation. It's just, fuck, I mean, not that I got anything against ballet, do the pirouettes or whatever the fuck they are. But, if we don't look after the planet and the one backyard we've got, there's going to be fucking no one left to pirouette. We're going to be fucked. We think we sit at the top of the food chain. We're not the main act. We're part of a system that's been refined over billions of years on a planet that's been spinning for 5.3 billion years. And if we think we're bigger and better than nature, we've got a surprise coming for us.
I'm so glad you guys have improvised and adapted and kept on going strong. And I'm sorry to drag you back onto Zoom for this.
No, fuck, it is what it is, hey?
So what's the biggest challenge you guys are facing right now?
Look, I mean, the biggest blockage we had was just the sheer scale of what we're trying to do, and being able to build the infrastructure to be able to deal with that scaling up as an organisation. Going from a small organisation that was a service provider to being an organisation that is across the regions we work, one of the biggest employers. and covering some of the largest areas in the country, and one of the biggest protectors of land in Zimbabwe, and expansion into surrounding countries at the same time. So it became an internal thing as an organisation, building that infrastructure for training and management, and hiring the right people, and having the money to be able to back that up. And there was a point there where you could have given us all the money in the world, but unless we had a team of trained Zimbabwean instructors, then there's no way we're going to be able to train the next group of Zimbabwean rangers. So working. Funding is always a challenge. And we've got a team working around the clock and trying to bring that funding in, and a very generous global community that supports us. But our job on the ground is try and use that money in the most effective way to achieve our mission. And in a way, the way we operate is still very special forces in terms of modus operandi. And special forces is small groups of people getting big jobs done with minimal resources and minimal fuss. And that's the sort of culture we still carry as an organisation. We don't have big fancy offices and headquarters and all that. We get shit done. We get shit done down in the dirt, and it's not fancy, and it's not technical. It's just going back to basics, getting the basics right, hiring the right people, making sure they believe their job is the most important job in the world, and giving them the tools to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I know, it's incredible the work that you do. And, for anyone that, I know you said it yourself, when people see your work, especially guys, they're like, right, we want to come out to Zimbabwe. We want to come and help you shoot poachers and things like that. And people like me watching Akashinga is like, I want to go and do that. But, it takes a special kind of person to do, the work that you're doing. And we're not all cut out for that. We're not all able to do it. So, I've been following you for a long time, as I said, and, we get the newsletters. I'm constantly staggered by the scale of the work that you're doing, by the countless projects that you have, and the massive fundraising that you've been doing and need to continue to do. So for everyone out there who can't be Akashinga, who can't get out there and help you in Zimbabwe, how can we help and support your work?
It's all about just looking at the way that we lead our lives, and it doesn't have to be IAPF or Akashinga. It's got to be something to do with conservation of the environment, and I suppose the strongest message I can give is that doing something good doesn't buy a credit to do something bad. We've got to keep improving our lives and the way we treat nature at every possible set of crossroads that we come to. Research more, to understand more about the implications of not looking after nature, of where we're going as a species, of where other species are going because of our actions. Choose an organisation, choose a cause, choose a mission, choose a passion, choose a purpose, choose something. But don't sit there and think that your effort is not going to be enough, and that the collective efforts of enough people are going to add up to something significant, because they will. But while individuals sit back and think other people are going to do the work, then we are fucked.
Yeah,
such a prominent message, especially right now. And finally, as someone who has been, seen, and done and accomplished so much, what is your vision for the future?
So we are in the process of scaling Akashinga to our second landscape. Our first landscape being the Zambezi Valley. The second landscape will take us to the ocean. It'll be a terrestrial / coastal maritime project, which for me, being having come from the ocean and the coast of Australia, is very exciting to be able to go back there now with Akashinga and a model that's working and scaling and doing so well. But by early 2026, the end of 26 at the latest, we would hope to have 20 areas, former trophy hunting areas, that have been reclaimed or have died out and being resurrected through this program, with an army of 1,000 women protecting those areas, women whose sons and daughters will be coming through the ranks, being trained through scholarship programs, women who are going on to university and coming back and helping rebuild the communities they came from. A slow revolution driven through education and empowerment in these communities that are turning them around and bringing them out of the dirt and the dust and into a place that a place of prosperity. Our other program, Lead Ranger, we're in the process of expanding that into Southern Africa now. We've just finished building the facility, and we'll be running the first instructors course before the end of the year. And Lead Ranger is the training of the capacity building of Indigenous leadership within existing and well-established conservation organisations. So far, we've trained 44 instructors from 5 countries with 1,100 rangers who work underneath them that help protect over 14 million acres of African wilderness every day. So the expansion of that program, if all I did for the rest of my life was be part of a team that helped expand Akashinga and Lead Ranger, then I would be a happy man. So the expansion of Lead Ranger to next Southern Africa and then to West Africa, and then perhaps beyond the continent, I think is where we're looking in the immediate future.
Fantastic. I can't wait to follow this all and keep our followers up to date. And I'm really excited to hear how this goes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I love what you said earlier about having hope, and listening to you, and everything that you've done and are doing and everything, you've got such a set vision for the future, and it is wonderful. I just have to ask, because people sort of, you see the IAPF and you sort of think, oh yeah, they save elephants and rhinos, but you play such a huge role in the community with its people as well. I was reading this week about a wee girl that was 2 years old and she suffered burns to 30% of her body. You've been helping her as well, haven't you? Yeah,
there's as well as stocking clinics and with medicines, when we first arrived in the new area that we've just set up, expanded into delivering babies without medication under candlelight. And, in a place where the difference between life and death can often be, a few bucks for malarial tablets or antibiotics, being able to come in and be able to provide solar electricity and basic medications and first aid training and have a nurse on site. It goes a long way in not only doing the right thing and doing what is humane and being able to help people, but building those relationships with the communities that ultimately will decide the future of the wilderness we're trying to protect. She's actually making a really good recovery, burns to 30% of her body. A few weeks ago, there was a young boy, Sean, who is 7 years old, and he hasn't been able to walk, and he's been dragging himself around in the dirt. He's still with a smile on his face, but that's how he used to get around, and he's got a wheelchair now. And his smile is a little bit bigger, but he doesn't have to drag himself in the dirt anymore. It's small amounts of money and small things. Another young girl hasn't been to school since she was very young because she's too embarrassed because she has a tumor on her face. Just something as simple as being able to get down and get a series of injections and start reducing the size of that tumor to a point where it can be removed. It doesn't. We raised like $4,000 for that specific case, and that's that $4,000 is going to change that girl's life. She's going to be able to go back to school and complete her high school certificate. Who knows? Maybe one day she'll be a ranger. But small change in our lives can mean big changes for others, and often to be lose perspective in the worlds we live in, and just a few bucks here and there can go a long way in someone else's life.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you'd like to support our speaker, then follow the links provided in the description. If you're enjoying this content, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like on our videos or drop a comment with something that you've learned. Your love and support means the world to us, and we thank you all for watching this.